Good evening, everyone. We are going to call the City of Deltona City Commission Workshop for Monday, October 11th, 2021 to order. May we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Vila Vasquez.
Present.
Commissioner King.
Here.
Commissioner McCool.
Here.
Commissioner Ramos.
Present.
Commissioner Sosa.
Here.
Vice Mayor Bradford. Here. Mayor Hersberg.
Here. Now may we all stand for the pledge to the flag. Commissioner King, would you like to lead us this evening?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. So for tonight's workshop, we have 2 items on the agenda. The first item today is an insurance presentation for process. Mr. Peters, you are up.
Madam Mayor, Commissioners, I had them pass out a 2-page document for you all to go by. I believe there was an extra copy for the audience. I'm not sure we have any more. Just a quick overview. The request was to review our insurance process on how it works in the city. But first of all, I wanted to go over the insurance that we have in place, and then I will talk a little bit about the process and some concerns that we have at a staff level on how we have handled things in the past and how we propose to go forward. As you can see, PRIA is our primary insurance group. It is actually in the form of a trust, which in many ways, many of these policies act more like a self-funded program. Other areas, it's traditional insurance. You will see that we have a total of $1,241,902 worth of coverage in 6 different areas. On the second page, it's a breakdown of what it covered under these policies. It should be noted that the property element and the worker comp are the 2 largest, representing 2/3 of the total insurance that we have outstanding. We do have a small policy that covers drones that we have in the fire department. It's fairly expensive, but once again, if a drone falls out of the sky, it's pretty much gone. It's about a $14,000 piece of equipment, so the insurance is critical to have. The process is that when we have claims, they are handled through our risk manager in the HR department. The claims are turned over to the insurance for processing. As you all know, we have several high-profile claims against the city from former and existing employees. But that seemed to be a trend. If you all remember, several months ago, I sent you all a list of all the settlements that we've had in the last 10 years. And most of those involve city employees. The largest single payout I believe we've had with the foot case that we recently had. I think it was about $250,000 for a sewer backup situation. Unfortunately, that was a situation where the city did not admit fault right away. Insurance, if you read the things we're covered for, if we had admitted fault, which we were at fault, the insurance would have handled it immediately. It got bought down internally as a in-house situation. Once I became aware of it, I did it as a PE. I did a certified letter signed and sealed by me that the city wasn't in fact at fault for that sewer backup because of the lift station adjacent to the property being higher than the house. And with that, the insurance stepped forward. But I think it's important to note that many of our claims are internal. They're not external. External would be, slip and fall on a sidewalk. things of that nature. For the most part, other than some utility-related stuff, we don't have very many of, which we're very fortunate. I attribute that in large part to a very robust public works department. When I call them or I send an email, they're usually out there within minutes doing the necessary repairs or blocking off the area. Your liability comes once you've been notified of a problem, so that's why we're very, very responsive in addressing those. The one problem area that I believe we have is, for whatever reason in the past, we have taken certain internal cases and have elected to handle them in-house rather than turning them over to the insurance. The problem with that is when you turn it over to insurance, they pay their attorney to deal with it. When we handle it internally, we're using our attorneys at our cost, and then the final settlement is at our cost. The question begs itself, then why are we paying insurance if we're not going to use it? And so with the consensus of the commission, what I would like to do is come back with a policy statement that is emphatic that all claims are turned over to the insurance company for them to deal with initially. If they can't deal with it, then we take it back at that point. That's my ask, if there's consensus. I know this is a very short overview, but it tells you, what policies we have, what we're covered for, and I think the most interesting thing is the fact that many of our claims are in-house, internal, as opposed to external, which I find unusual. And one of those things that we're having conversations with our insurance company, because I believe that we're getting a bit of a reputation to being very generous with the internal claims, and therefore we're begging internal people to make claims. As you all saw when I sent the stuff before, we had a lot of $400, $800 payouts, which was basically to pay for the attorney for the people to file a claim against us. And I would use an example from a neighboring city that had $2 $250,000 payouts, and almost the entire money for two people was for the lawyers. Very little went to the people that filed the complaint. And I suspect we would see a similar trend here, except for a couple high-profile employees here in the past that I believe had given rise to the belief that you can file a claim against our insurance and get a payout. So with that, like I said, I would like a consensus to bring back a policy statement about all claims going to insurance, and then I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner McCool, and then Vice Mayor Bradford.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The internal claims, what is, if you can just give me a 30,000-foot view, the internal claims, what is the main claim? I know that it falls within that, slip and fall, wrongful termination. What are the biggest claims, the internal claims?
On external?
Internal.
Internal?
Yes, sir.
I believe there was a $90,000 claim that was paid out by a former employee for retaliatory termination. I believe the next closest one was in the 40,000 range, and then it drops off after that. But you are aware that right now, and I guess it's no surprise to the public, we have a former acting city manager that has a claim against us, and their number was significant. And we have the HR director who had a claim against it for unlawful termination, even though as of this minute he had not been terminated.
So that's what I was alluding to, okay? And I just want to state my feeling on the former and the latter in a less than 30-second blurb. And I think that we've discussed this, right? And my personal feeling is that were we to pay out a dime on the former, this is why I asked we talked about a workshop, right? Because we really don't have any input. If the insurance company says we're going to settle, the matter never comes before the commission. And as I said before, when we settle something, it says a lot about us as a commission and as a city, okay? And I don't subscribe to the school of thought in which this lawsuit was raised or to the insurance company, because that's my reputation.
But let me clarify something here.
Okay.
When the insurance company comes back with a potential settlement, the commission has an opportunity to say no. However, you now take the case over. The insurance company is providing a settlement in which they will pay the full settlement. The commission always has the right to say, we're not good with that, and take it on themselves at that point. And, in I know one instance, the city attorney has already made it abundantly clear of certain language that we would prefer to be in the final settlement, if there is one, regarding some statements that were made. I just want to correct the record that the commission does have a say. It's just that if you say no, it's on you. Going back to the other community that I was referring to, it came back to them in a shade meeting to discuss where they would take the settlement. They on a split vote took it, as the record showed afterwards. And as I said, most of the settlement money went to the lawyers. No offense to our city attorney, but sometimes I feel like this is a way for lawyers to pay lawyers. But regardless, you all do have a say at the end.
And I thank you for that. And just, this is the only place that we can talk about this as a commission unless this comes back to shade meeting. So in the undiluted, full fat connotation here, I feel that the allegations that were made against me when talking about being discriminatory, because it's going to be public record, right? That's baloney, and I feel that if we give that one red cent that we're saying that there's some kind of, we have a second thought about whether we were guilty of that or not, which I think is unmitigated crap. There's not a discriminating person up here sitting on this dais. I know, I work with them, and I know what our city model is, and we've said for the record that. So it is my feeling that if the insurance company tries to settle for one red dime where somebody has doubt in their mind that we didn't do the right thing, and I feel in my heart that we did. So I'm calling baloney on that one. And as far as the second lawsuit, same thing as well. And public is frothing at the mouth about, there's rumor and conjecture about that as well. And it's been talked about, written about, theorized about, and until they know the full facts, same with that. So I wanted to say that. This is the only place that I can say this in a public place, right? Can't talk about it. So that's where I'm at with that.
If I may address the second one.
Yes, sir.
Just putting out a public notice on this. A letter was sent Friday before last to the party. It was a notice of intent to terminate. Gave them 5 business days from the time they received it to respond as to whether they wanted to have a hearing to provide their side of the story with regard to the disciplinary action. That 5-day time frame ends at the end of business tomorrow. So unless we hear something before then, that particular person will be terminated at that time.
Thank you very much. And all things, just remember this, that more will be revealed. And there's a process for this. And I'm talking to people who have asked me about this and why I haven't spoken on it. And more will be revealed. And once I think that people are privy to all of the information, that, again, more will be revealed. So thank you for clarifying those. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Bradford?
That was part of what I was going to say. Let's go back to the internal. So aside from those, these smaller, there was a few smaller things that you had sent through. Obviously, that's probably going to fall under the employment-related practices liability, I'm assuming. Is the insurance company working with us, giving us best practices to keep those numbers from going up? Because obviously I don't want us to be like, oh, we got this little claim, we're going to turn it in, where it's something that policy-wise or somehow we could have resolved it quickly internally. And I want to be cautious on this because I don't want everybody to think, hey, yeah, turn it in and we're just going to give you a claim. And, we don't want it to be that way. I know a lot of times insurance company will say, here's documents, here's forms. I mean, I've asked them personally just to straight out on myself, on my own company. I've said, hey, do you have a example of a good policy to hand out so that we're covered in this event? And it's amazing the number of policies and items and documents that they have. Have we approached them in any way, which I am for us turning it over to the insurance. I think by all means, that's why you have it. But what I also want to do is to cover ourselves, because I don't want our insurance rates to go up because we are turning too many things over. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure I heard a question there.
Have we had contact? Obviously, we have contact with the insurance company. Have we done an analysis of the claims that we currently had? So say we had turned in XYZ number of claims instead of us dealing with them ourselves. Have we done an analysis and said, okay, I'm seeing a pattern of certain things happening here, and how can we eliminate this from happening so we're not turning too many claims over and having this number raised even higher?
Absolutely. Very soon, you're going to be seeing a new personnel policy and procedure manual for y'all's consideration for approval. A number of things that we have been doing are a direct result of that evaluation you're referring to. For instance, as I referred to a few minutes ago, we sent out a letter of intent to terminate. That is the beginning of a due process procedures. It allows the employee the opportunity to see what we said they violated in city policies and procedures. It gives them an opportunity to provide their side of the story. And if they provide exculpatory information or whatever, then, the level of discipline would change at that point. If they choose not to, we gave them the right to due process, and that's a very important step in this. And I'm not playing lawyer, and I don't want this one to knock me upside the head here in a minute, but one of the critical things that we haven't done a good job of in the past is following a due process procedures. If you follow the process, do an investigation, give people an opportunity to provide evidence, then you make a determination it's the proper way to go, whether it's just a slap on the hand with a counseling session all the way up to termination. You give the employee an opportunity to deal with it. There's a grievance process built into our policy and procedures except for termination. That's why we have done in the last several cases the letter of intent to terminate. We've done several of them now. So we have changed our internal processes. And I want to give a big shout out to Rebecca Wilk, who has been running the HR department for the last several months. Rebecca has been a major part in spearheading the changes that we are doing to better protect the city in the future, because we're doing a better job of documenting issues in the files. We will talk in a few minutes when we talk about the John O'Grady contract. We had him do several investigations from employees of the past who had filed a complaint regarding another employee, all five for the same employee. Nothing was in the file because it was determined that there was no substance. Well, I'm sorry, even if you don't have a substantive issue, you put those complaints in a separate folder so that over time you see a pattern. If you got 5 people saying essentially the same thing about a person over a 2 or 3 year period, you probably got a problem. But we didn't have anything in the files. So Mr. Grady was tasked with coming in, interviewing those 5 people to get the file taken care of, because God forbid one of those 5 people filed a lawsuit and I have no records. You talk about losing the case real quick. That will do it. That is the processes that we have been going through since I had come on board to avoid a lot of the problems in the past. You know, I can sit here and say, yeah, there's a perception that you can file against our insurance and win. Yeah, and we set up that process. We didn't put processes in place to provide due process. We didn't follow standard protocol when it comes to how to handle an investigation. We had people who were terminated for some pretty simple reasons. They filed complaints, can't find anything in the file for their complaints. And so, that's part of the reason we get some of these claims that we have. Okay. So we are working hard on correcting that. The new personnel handbook is very specific to the process of how disciplinary action occurs. It also has another major distinction. In our current policies and procedures, there's no definition of a minor and a major offense. Now, major offenses are those things you can be terminated for on the spot. Not wearing your steel-toed boots is not one of them. That's a minor. But we don't distinguish. The new policies and procedures do. So the new policies and procedures are trying to address deficiencies that we have in our current policies and procedures. When we approved the one quickly when I came on board, my promise to you all was that we would come back with the new procedures. We will be. It is being finalized right now by Sandy and Sharon. We will go through an internal review, make some changes, and then we'll be bringing it to you all. And we may do a workshop first because there's a lot of new stuff in it. And I think it's imperative that you all understand what we're changing and why.
So can I ask, are we back to doing exit reviews? So when somebody leaves, to me, an exit review is critical because they can give us enlightenment. Why are you leaving? I mean, we can then spearhead a problem before it gets to be a problem. I mean, you may have staff who don't want to talk about whatever, but they may write it down or do whatever. I don't know if we still do that. I know we used to do it, and then a prior city manager stopped it. But that was stopped because the prior city manager didn't want bad reviews on them. So, but to me, that's a critical item because that should allow us to spearhead, like you're saying, before a situation happens. And, that would be the first sign of, hey, we could have a serious problem here. So I would just, if you could reconsider what we can do if we're not doing those exit reviews, to start those exit reviews back up. Thank you.
Well, let me just say this. The case of the former acting city manager has nothing to do with our personnel policy because he was not truly under the personnel policies when he was acting city manager. His issue is his contract and the manner in which it was handled. Mr. Fowler and I are in agreement that everything with regard to his contract was followed to the T.
No, I'm not talking about that one. I'm talking about when staff leave. I'm talking about, there used to be a policy, and I don't know if we still had it, that when staff left, or staff quit, not terminated, but if a staff member is quitting and you'll start to see a pattern, hey, we just had 5 people leave, and I'm just throwing a department, I don't want to throw a department out there. I have staff leaving from XYZ department. Obviously, it's a sign if I have an abundance of staff leaving, but if we're doing those exit reviews, are we seeing a pattern on why these staffs are leaving? Are they all leaving for the same reason? Are they all making comments on the same thing? So we used to have it, and like I said, it was taken back because of prior, so it's just something to look into.
Much like the insurance stuff, we have been doing full analysis of why people are leaving. It is everything from just until recently, the pay level, especially like in Deltona Water, in the Parks and Rec Department, people could drive across the river and make more money. So there was monetary reasons. Sometimes people are not comfortable in the role they're in. They may claim otherwise. And there's a multitude of reasons why people leave. We do exit interviews, so we have good ideas of why some people are leaving, and we make every effort to address them as quickly as we can.
Commissioner Avila Vasquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Peters, for the record, can you explain, because I'm pretty sure there are residents out there that are a little bit confused when we say insurance versus Mr. Fowler. So what goes to the insurance company and what goes to Mr. Fowler, so that our residents can understand? Because I get questioned, why do we have an insurance company and we're paying our lawyers, for the same thing? So I just want an explanation.
Well, there's a couple cases that come to mind. Y'all approved a settlement just recently on a firefighter. That one was handled internally. There was really no reason why that case could not have been handled by the insurance company, but the administration at the time chose to keep it in-house rather than going to the insurance. I was not here at the time. I do not know the specifics of why, but ultimately the city agreed to pay into the pension to make the particular firefighter whole with regard to their pension. So, that cost fell on the city. So that was an example of an internal case.
But, okay, so I'm sorry, but let me ask you, so if somebody falls in our property, in the city property, right, is that an insurance or is that a Mr. Fowler? Or if somebody sues the city for whatever other reason, is that insurance or is that Mr. Fowler?
Just about every case should be insurance. About the only example I can tell you right off the bat of reason that it's not insurance is if you have a land use matter such as Hickory Oaks, the policy is very specific that it does not cover land use cases. And so consequently, we are doing that internal. However, the developer at this point is paying the freight. So most of it is not falling on us. Part of it did because we had certain issues that were related to our code that we had to address quickly. And so we did, and there was a cost involved there. But most of the cost of Hickory Oaks appears at this point will be paid by the developer. That's the one case that was appropriate to be internal because insurance doesn't cover that.
So Mr. Fowler is basically for developing developers, something like that? Accidents and stuff goes to the insurance?
Yeah, that's primarily true, but there is other situations in which the consequences of a settlement might reflect poorly on the city or the individual commissioners. So we tend to keep an eye on those kind of cases so that they don't settle so quickly and admit that you all are bad people. So you've kind of got to handle it correctly. At least you come across as less than competent in the marketplace and in the public eye, let's say. So but there aren't too many of those. That's pretty rare.
Okay, my next question is, none of us up here have an attorney's degree. When we have a case, and this came up before, where we were asked to settle, to make a vote on a settlement, and everyone agreed that we were in no position to do that. So going back to that, are the commissioners in a position to make a decision on a lawsuit? Yes, they can get that amount of money. No, they can't get that amount of money. Are we in a position to make that decision other than the lawyers that are working for the city?
Well, the lawyers would make a recommendation to you and provide you with the information, and then assuming you believe what they've told you and that it's accurate, it would be up to you to say, yes, that's an appropriate resolution of this case.
So
Kind of like listening to your doctor. Ultimately, you have to say, yes, I'll have that operation, or yes, I'll take that medication. Hopefully, you've got a competent doctor, and he makes good recommendations to you.
Well, I won't consider the same thing. I don't think it's the same, but I'll
Well, professional recommendation that you accept. Let's phrase it that way.
Okay, so that was one question. The other question I have is the exit interviews. Did we have exit interviews and we stopped? That's from Mr. Peters. Did we have exit interviews and we stopped? Is that what I'm listening to? Because
I don't know.
Well, I'm asking Mr. Peters, in my lifetime career, there's always been an exit interview whether you are resigning or you are being let go. It's part of the HR policy. So did we have exit interviews and somehow somebody decided to stop it because I might get a bad review? Am I understanding that correctly?
I'm sorry, I don't know.
Well, I think the question is
I'm asking Mr. Peters.
Mr. Peters, to your knowledge, since you have been the acting city manager, was there a policy to not have exit interviews since you've been in this position?
Can you add that one more time?
Yes, exit interviews. When an employee leaves, it's normal process to have an exit interview.
We offer exit interview for all employees that leave.
But the comment was made that in the past, we had them, then we stopped doing exit interviews, and now we have reinstated that. Do you know anything about that?
No, ma'am, we've been doing exit interviews all the way through, my understanding.
Okay. And
A lot of employees choose not to do one.
And when they choose not to fill out or sign when they choose not to do an exit interview, do we at least have them sign a form saying, I have no comments or anything like that? And does the person who is leaving get a copy of their exit interview form, Is that in place?
Well, the exit interview is a standard form. It has the same questions for everybody. Now, if there are statements made with regard to a supervisor being difficult to work with and all, There usually is a follow-up phone call or interview to get the details. And then a director would provide a copy of the exit interview that, hey, Supervisor so-and-so is accused of doing X, Y, and Z. An evaluation done, discussions are had to find out the veracity of the statements made. It would be accurate to say that we have had multiple occasions where people have put things in the exit interview that, upon further reflection, had no basis in reality. And then there have been times that we've had things in the exit interview that we've had to take certain actions or corrective measures.
And do they get a copy of that?
Ma'am?
Do they get a copy? The employee who's leaving, do they get a copy of that form that they sign?
Not that I'm aware of. If they were to ask for it, we would provide it as a public record, but it would be incumbent on them to make that request. For instance, they made a statement in the exit interview, and we said, we'll look into it. They have every right to say, can you provide me a copy of what happened? And we would.
All right.
But that's pretty rare.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Peters. Thank you, Mr. Skip.
All good, Commissioner? All set? Commissioner Ramos?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's kind of like unfortunate, but fortunate to hear you say the fact about policies and procedures. But it's great to hear the word that you continue to use for various times, and that's the process. Unfortunately, the lack of process is what keeps getting us in situations. So I'm hoping that we can fix that process and we can follow a process, and therefore having policy and procedures that work. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. So I just have a couple comments. So basically, it's my understanding, Mr. Peters, you're asking for, when you bring this forth to the commission or a consensus this evening, to have a proper process in place that all claims go through the insurance and we don't handle them in-house willy-nilly, those that we decide to handle in-house. Am I correct in that statement?
What I'm asking for a consensus for us to bring a policy back to the commission that all claims go through the insurance, at least at the onset.
Okay, and Commissioners, I would direct you back to an email that was sent out February 17th of 2021, and it is a spreadsheet of all the claims in the last 10 years that was provided to us. And if you look in terms of settling, there are a lot of the claims that were through the insurance were denied. A lot of them were denied. There were some settled. The spreadsheet is there if you want another copy of that. I mean, I have it right here, and the insurance has not settled with everyone. So let's not have that as a false narrative. There are a lot of claims denied against employees and against individuals for whatever reason they've chose to make a claim. That said, we also have had claims against former employees claimed when I was on the dais that no one ever told us about as commissioners that were settled for $90,000+. And that's a little concerning to me as an elected official when staff and insurance company make a settlement to a former employee and none of us are even made aware that that kind of a settlement has been made. So that's a little troubling to me because in some particular cases, these are hashed over and over and over on social media, in the public, in emails, at commission meetings. We're accused of things and it continues to be chattered about, yet we sit up here and we have no idea that that employee that made accusations was given a settlement. None. So for any future reference, I would like, me personally, if the commission is so inclined to make that when we have this workshop or when you bring this policy forward to us, at least a quarterly or every half a year an update of what we're, just a spreadsheet like this, because I think that as elected officials and in view of what's out there, we should know, especially when you're talking about some of the stuff being raked through social media over and over again. Because once you sent this out, believe me, it's a very interesting document. Very interesting. So I think that the main thing this commission has to decide is to have, what you said, Commissioner Ramos, a process, and that the process is fair and that it goes through the insurance. And if something comes up, as was brought up today, that we don't maybe want to have that go through the insurance, we don't want to settle, we do want to settle, then that is brought to us. But for everything else, we have to have, I fail to understand how we can pick and choose, we're going to do this one internally and this one not. It's very troubling to me, because then we're paying twice. We're paying, not only are we paying an insurance company to handle that for us and their attorneys to handle that for us, when we decide to pick one that we're going to do internally, we're paying our attorneys and we're paying a settlement. And then in the case of a pension situation, what's the true cost? What is the true cost over time? Is it a flat fee? Do we, are we continually, is there a fluctuation? I mean, it has to be a process. So is this commission in consensus to have Mr. Peters bring back a proper process for this? Is it, I believe, sir, yes, consensus? You have consensus to bring that forward.
Thank you.
And I think we can have that next discussion then. So no more, there's no one on the board, so would you like to move on to the next item then, sir?
Wait a minute. For purposes of full disclosure, we have reached a settlement agreement in the Brandy White case for $15,000. The insurance will be paying that cost. At this point, the settlement agreement will go back to the courts for the court to give the final order. But I just want to let you all know that's an example of a case where it was first turned over to the insurance denied the claim. Ms. White came to the commission and we reopened it. Mr. Fowler and I negotiated an agreement for up to $25,000 worth of counseling that was rejected at the end. And then a lawsuit was enjoined by the Ms. White, and it turned over to our insurance again, and there has been a settlement in that case, like I said, for $15,000. It's not final, but both parties have signed, and I did it under my authority for $25,000, but I did want to inform you all of that fact, so that's it.
Commissioner McCool?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I wanted to ask also with that, I don't want to get into, I just want to bring this up. I don't need to necessarily get into detail, Mr. Peters. But I wanted to make sure that I know that part of that initial ask for her, right, was us creating policy, a grievance policy, whereas residents would not feel retaliated against, and that there was a process for them to make complaints like that without being retaliated against. So is that part of the, I listen, y'all have gone back and forth. I just want to make sure, because those are the things, the money can come and go, but those are the things that are lasting, and I think that that was part of the reason that Ms. White was so adamant about this, is to make sure that this didn't happen to anyone else.
Ms. McCool, as I have said on a number of occasions, I think the manner in which Ms. White's case initially was handled was deplorable. If I was going to file a complaint against a citizen, they would hear it from me first. They would not be served papers by the Sheriff's Department. So, my commitment to the commission, as long as I'm in the role that I am, that we would not be retaliatory or less than upfront or anything of that manner going forward.
And I appreciate that transparency, and I appreciate you stating that for the record, because it was a long and arduous process. And so thank you, sir, for that. I just wanted to get that on record. I know that since this came up that you were taking steps, right, and that you have been working on that, but I just wanted it disclosed to the public that was happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner McCool. And this commentary is a reason why we are having this discussion. Because these are cases where, especially if they're high profile, the commission needs to know the process and what the outcome is going to be. So thank you very much for that commentary and that update, and please keep the commission informed as to anything that's finalized. Okay, now we can move on to item B. Discussion item is the ASA contract. Mr. Peters?
Yes, ma'am. I apologize for not being here last Monday. I think there were a couple items. Ms. Kifalo did a wonderful job, but I didn't quite prepare her for a couple of things, and I take full responsibility for that. We have had some discussions internally between herself and I with regard to a better process for me to keep her informed of what's in my brain that may not necessarily be on paper somewhere. In the case of the ASA contract, the $97 an hour figure, a little bit of explanation here. We have a number of consultant contracts, continuing service consultant contract with engineering firms, planning firms, and the like. A typical engineering contract, the engineers are generally paid between $150 and $200 an hour. That sounds like an astronomical number. However, they use what's called a multiplier. And that multiplier is typically between 2.5 and 3. So what you do is the cost of having an office, having the equipment, having the training, having AutoCAD, having all these things is usually about 100% of the person's value. Then if we have discussed on many occasions, the benefits package is 40 to 45% of a person's salary. So that right there is 2.5 multiplier. But certain firms have higher multipliers because they have other costs. As I just said, the engineers generally are $150 to $200 an hour. I don't consider Mr. O'Grady an engineer, but by comparison, $97 an hour in a typical consulting firm would be a CAD draftsman or administrative assistant. So I just want to put that $97 figure in perspective for you. The second thing is I want to apologize because I did watch the meeting. I especially heard Mr. King express concern about the fact that when the contract was presented, while the contract did say for code enforcement, it also said, and for other services as assigned. When I did that, I didn't have a defined list of what those would be. So that's why I worded it the way I did. I knew that we would probably be looking at accreditation for the fire department. That was a goal of mine when I first came on board. I should have said code enforcement and other assigned duties such as the accreditation in the fire department and other such matters. If you go through the things that Mr. O'Grady has worked on, he is already working on the process for accreditation for code compliance for the fire department and Parks and Recreation. In the case of Parks and Recreation, it will be the first Parks and Recreation department in the area to be accredited. I'm not sure that there are any accredited fire departments in Volusia County. That accreditation process is a level of professionalism that is very important to me, and from what I have talked to commissioners individually about, it's equally important. The community needs to know that their departments that they're paying for are professional. The accreditation process includes, for instance, in Parks and Rec, and doing a master plan. We are hiring more people to get our parks back up to snuff in terms of maintenance. We also have some serious needs for capital improvement projects down the road. One of the things that really drives me crazy with our parks is you get into our parks, they're beautiful. But getting to them, you go down a dirt road, you park in a dirt parking lot. and then you got the beautiful field. Now, a couple of our parks are exceptions, and those are our most popular parks. But we need to give, from an erosion standpoint, the amount of time and money we take regrading the parking areas, the inefficiency of the parking. When you pull in, you got people parked at 45-degree angles and 90 degrees to each other, and I joke that we probably get 50% efficiency out of our parking because we don't have marked parking spaces like you do in a paved parking lot. Those are things that will be identified. The other things that will be identified is you use national standards as to how many acres of open space we should have per capita. That should ring dear to Ms. McCool. We are very fortunate to have a lot of open space in the city. It's not well documented. It is in our comprehensive plan. It's buried in there. But those are things that are important to let the public know that this is where we are, and that's part of the accreditation process. If we find a deficiency, we have to have a plan to deal with that deficiency in order to get accredited. So the fire department, similar. We're going to go through an analysis process. We're going to look at our management structure, our response times. We already know that our response time is higher than the national average. So as part of that analysis, it's going to be how can we get the response time down? If there's something internally we can do, does it require another fire station? Any number of things that may factor in to improving our response time. But that's all part of the accreditation process. One of the beauties of going through the accreditation process kind of goes back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago when Ms. Bradford, you asked, have we analyzed, the insurance and the claims and those type of things? The accreditation process forces you to do those analysis. And that's one of the beauties of going through the process is it's a formal process that at the end, you have evaluated what you're doing, how you're doing it, and how you can make it better. And the public benefits mightily from that whole process. When we finish with these three departments, I fully expect that we will then go to Deltona Water and Public Works. That is an accreditation process I do not relish because I know what it's involved. It's much more difficult than fire and those type departments. But as I said in the beginning, the whole purpose of the accreditation process is to elevate ourselves on a professional level. There's nothing that is more prideful than having that decal on the side of the fire truck that we are an accredited agency. That's as good an honor as you can get. Mr. O'Grady is uniquely qualified to this process because he not only had gone through the accreditation for the police departments before, but he took a police department to the Excelsior level, which is the highest level that you can go. So he knows how this process works. He's uniquely qualified for that. In addition to, as you all know, during the whole thing with code compliance, we had a number of workshops. We got good information from the public. We put policies and procedures in place. We have transformed the management structure within code enforcement. Richard Lovett is now over the entire code enforcement. He used to be a shared supervisor, but Richard's now over the entire thing. We moved Danny Ron out of the office out into the field with Mark Gibson. They're the two field supervisors. We're going to look at what hours we work going forward. And so that has improved. Ron Paradise has stepped up, and he's now our community development director over buildings, waste management, code compliance, and planning. Ron has been extremely valuable during his revamping of code compliance in terms of teaching the intent of the code in many times, or even what's in there. Recently, we've had this onslaught of special event permits, and all that. It was mishandled for many years. In fact, we're reevaluating that section of the code because it's extremely confusing between what is a special event, what is a event, and what is a block party. We actually have 3 separate sections, and you almost have to be a lawyer to figure out which one of the 3 applies. So, that's a level of confusion that we need to clean up, and we will. Mr. O'Grady, as I alluded to a few minutes ago, was involved in doing the internal investigation interviews to put information in the files with regard to these 5 complaints. There was another complaint of a person that was terminated that some of you all probably heard about, where there was a 95-page complaint. That 95-page complaint was given to the city, and it was elected not to pursue it or to even keep a copy. There's no way to replicate that at this point. But that's the kind of things that we found going through all of this investigation we've been doing. We've had some other investigations with regard to a certain employee that involved a potential for fraud. We turned it over. Well, first of all, we worked closely with the Sheriff's Department to determine if it met the definition. Once we determined that it did meet the definition, it was turned over to a detective in the Sheriff's Department. They came back with a recommendation of 2 different forms of misdemeanor fraud. Because of the circumstances involved, at this time, the insurance attorney has said, let's not pursue it at this time, but it's there. That's just an example of what Mr. O'Grady's been working on. He's been a real asset to the city. A lot of the forward progress that we've been making has been in large part for his assistance. As he said last Monday, he also has resources, people that can have expertise that he knows. Many of them people that he worked with in previous employee at Orlando or where have you. For instance, one of the problems that we were finding is we talk about when people leave and why they're leaving. We were having problems getting people in the door because, yes, we would say, we want to hire you, but we need to send you to Daytona Beach to get your fingerprint. And you need to call and make an appointment, and the appointment is a week later. You got to wait a week to get your fingerprint. Then once we get your fingerprint, we do the background. Oh, we send that to a company, and that'll take another week. We were taking almost a month to get people cleared to be hired. With Mr. O'Grady's help, we have found another company to do the backgrounds that are quicker. We are in the process of getting a digital fingerprint machine for the Deltona Sheriff's Office on Providence. It's not only going to help the city with regard to processing these new hires, but it will also be an asset for all the businesses in the city who have a need for processing that. It also helps us with regard to our volunteers. You have somebody that wants to volunteer to be a coach or to be an official. Remember that thing I said about a week to get a fingerprint and another week or 2 to get your background? If you're a volunteer, really? Really, I want to volunteer, and you're going to send me over to Daytona and all that stuff. So it's going to pay dividends in many ways. So I'm trying to keep it simple here, but the city has really done well with that contract, especially when we were at $67.50. That was a bargain. It's still a bargain at $97. So with that, I will shut up and I will answer any questions you might have.
Commissioners, do you have any questions regarding what Mr. Peters is talking about with this? Commissioner McCool?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for clearing that up, Mr. Peters. Stacy did do a good job last week, and this is more for my constituents because I've had this conversation with a couple of them regarding this wage. Oh my God, $97 an hour, and so we've talked about that and reiterating that, you know, repetition breeds proficiency and efficiency, right, when it comes to doing a job. And so just for edification, some people that make $100 an hour, okay, short list here, but this is, so underwater welders, life coaches, commercial pilots, freelance photographers, tattoo artists, hand and foot model, psychiatrist, an arbitrator, interior designer, copywriter, consultant, and massage therapist. So it is not out of realm that we're paying somebody that is helping us set policy and procedure for a city our size to be paying that fee, right? So, I mean, it really, so that's, he's basically what he's doing is he's defragging our files. You know, we had a lot of scattered policy, procedure, bits and pieces here, and he is helping bring this together in a cohesive manner so that all of the things that we've talked about, right, we have a process for them. And that's what one of the complaints has been in the past is, you know, why did this person do this but not this person do this? Why did this happen but not this? And we are defragging the files. We're making our city more proficient so that we have more time to work on our city as opposed to working in our city, because if you're in business, you understand that concept. We've been so busy putting out fires that we've not been able to move forward as grandly as we would like to, because we're busy trying to control trash and code violation, and it's, you know, it's just, we're getting to where we want to operate like a city so that we can offer all of the good stuff for our city, our beautiful parks and recreation, so that our residents feel safe, right, with our sheriff's department, our fire department. We know that we have the best here, and that's what we're trying to do, and that's what he is doing here. So those residents, thank you for continuing to reach out and ask these questions. This is so much better. I like what you're doing. It's so much better than the rumor and conjecture mill of past, that people are really dialoguing, right, and wanting to know this. So thank you, Mr. Peters, for clearing that up.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else?
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I forgot the most important thing that Mr. O'Grady is going to be working on. That is Mr. O'Grady and Ms. Kipolo are going to be the negotiating team for the city for the fire union contract that's going to begin later this month. I have purposely set it up this way because I want to create a level of separation from myself, from the commission, from the process. We've had some discussions internally about areas of concern. The one good bit of news that I will share is that when we reviewed our firefighters' pay compared to all the other agencies in Volusia County, it appears that we're now the highest paid, slightly over Daytona Beach. We have shown good faith to the union to make the adjustments that we made just in the last month. We are looking forward to this negotiating process. And so, like I said, I'm purposely, after today, I'm out of it. They will negotiate it. At times, they may need to come see me about a couple of items, clarification, but my intention is to steer clear of it so that there won't be any appearance of undue influence or anything like that.
Vice Mayor?
Okay, so this goes back to questions I had last week. 20 hours a week. He's going to be able to do all these items in that 20-hour-a-week span and not take away from what we're progressing with so far, as far as code goes. Because as he's saying, when he brings in a consultant, that counts towards that 20 hours. So if he brings in consultants for 4 hours, he brings in a few consultants for 4 hours and somebody else, time's gone. So I guess I'm back to hours in a day. Is that enough? A week, I should say. To do everything that you guys are asking, is that a logical number, 20 hours for everything we're now looking? Because I believe we said HR as well. Wasn't there something with HR he was doing too? There was HR, there's parks, there's a few big jobs you got going on right there.
Mr. O'Grady, to date, has done a magnificent job of managing the hours. He keeps, I'm assuming, a spreadsheet where he has it on his calendar. For instance, if he brings in Mr. Clee to help with the workshops, he limits his hours that week. Even while we were doing the workshops, he was within the hourly limit of the contract. So if he goes over those hours, he doesn't charge us. I have been monitoring the hours, and it's within the contract limit every week.
Good? Or? Okay? Okay. All right. Do we have any members of the public that signed up to speak?
Madam Mayor, we have 2 public comments. Albert Bryant, please, and then Richard Bellick.
Thank you, ma'am.
Brian Deltona. I noticed on a nice piece of paper that was given to me by the acting city manager that nowhere on this paper does it show a percentage what went up or went down from year to year. Maybe I'm missing it, or maybe it's just not on there. The other thing I have, or the other question I have about that part of it is, in all reality, is it cheaper for us to settle? Or is it cheaper for us to take it to court? Everything I've ever learned in my life is it's pretty expensive to take to court. And a lot of times the insurance company would rather settle without a claim of guilt rather than take it to court and spend my precious money of the city. That being said, one thing I didn't hear tonight about the acting or the contracted Mr. O'Grady is how it was put in the agenda. When we read the agenda last week, it stated $67. You can't open anything on this agenda to find out that, oh, it was $97. Oh, it's $32 or 32 hours a week or 148. I don't like being misled. That's one thing I can honestly stand here and say, that anytime I've felt that I've been misled, I've come up here and told you about it. You talk about transparency. Where was the transparency? We come in here, we pick the agenda up, we expect to see what's going on.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Richard Bellick, please.
I'm not going to knock John O'Grady. He found time for me. Heidi, I want to ask you a question. You mentioned in process, right? You went through a big thing about lawsuits and stuff, then went on to other subjects, right? Never in these lawsuits did you ever mention that it cost the people more money because every time they settle a case, fight a case, the insurance goes up, up. The cow never jumped over the moon. You know that, right? Let's get to the important factors. Let's not skirt stuff. And you said process. A process is asking your public what they think. We're not all stupid. We might get irrational at times because that's part of your growing up, I guess. But you got to ask your public. That's your process. You've been here a long time, Heidi, 11, 12 years now. Come on, it's the same old story. I'm sitting there. We went from lawsuits to parks. Come on, that's no process. Now, getting back to John O'Grady, he found time for me. I thought this guy was a stuffed shirt. I thought he was something different. But he seemed very, very kind and courteous. I mean, he was more than receptive. And what he gets an hour, I'm no judge of that. I want to get back to another thing. A lawyer does not get an attorney's degree. He gets a law degree. And your other thing there with an employee leaving, it's called a non-disclosure form. Am I right, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Fowler. By the way, how's your health? Good. Non-disclosure. These are the things you're missing. Your public is not stupid. Now, if you're settling all these cases and being sued all the time, something's wrong, and it's got to be up there. You're telling they settle a case, they don't even tell you. That's where I get back to. You can't believe the cow jumped over the moon. You got to get your feet on the ground. Look at all the people here. I couldn't find a seat. Come on, Heidi. I hate to come up here like this. I come up here last week to spread something to the public, what good manners, and to say it the way it was.
Thank you.
Somebody suffer from asbestos, could learn something about it.
Thank you, Mr. Belich.
Actually, it's a gift. There's billions.
Thank you, sir.
They said
Thank you.
cow never jumped over the moon.
Got it.
Madam Mayor, this ends public comment.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner, City Manager, any comments?
Yes, ma'am, I got a couple. First of all, with regard to Mr. Bryant's comment about hiding
Agenda.
things, we were fully prepared to pull that item off the agenda and make the correction. I take full responsibility. What I did is I took the agenda memo from back in January, February, copied it, made a couple minor changes, totally missed the dollar amount. I meant to change it. One of the things that we will do going forward is prior to public comment on consent items, if we have something that we want you to pull, we will do it prior to the public participation because Mr. Bryan is right. The perception was that we were trying to pull a fast one, yet we had a couple commissioners that caught the error. We were fully prepared to pull the agenda and correct the item separate from the consent items for transparency reason. And to the extent of my error causing the problems, I apologize profusely.
Okay, that's it. Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, Commissioners, and we are adjourned.